Welcome everybody, my name is Amanda Alexander and I am here on behalf of NABS talking to you about how to survive as a working parent in times of a global pandemic and beyond. So I hope that what I share with you today will really help you in these uncertain times that we live in. How many times have you heard that? I want to start just by sharing something that I read in the August Sunday Times magazine. It was the August the 30th. And it's an article about, it's looking at the wash up of what happened over lockdown with homeschooling. Homeschool, the lessons learned. And this paragraph really stood out for me. A giant assumption was made that parents would be the backstop for education. But time and again, we heard parents were on their knees, frustrated, angry, and powerless because they couldn't do anything to improve the situation for their children. Yet no one even bothered to ask the simple question, how's it going? Isn't that so true? So my question to you is, how's it going for you? Really? What have you learned over the past months with the lockdown and then post-lockdown into uncertainty? And one of the things that I have noticed since September, for me and for other working parents, is that we kind of thought we'd get normality back. And then we realised that the normality of having kids back at school, at nursery, was shifting sands, that anything could change at any moment. And I could tell you so many stories of so many children who've been sent home, tests, isolation, etc., etc., etc. I even had my own encounter with my youngest son's school when I read one of the many policy documents that they sent out, and it was about unauthorized absence. And in this policy document, they said that if a child is asked to isolate, basically if you come back from a country, say if you've been on holiday as a child with your parents and you come back, you've been on holiday during a half-term holiday and you come back and you have to go into isolation because the government has decided that that country has to go into isolation, then that isolation period of 2 weeks will be marked as unauthorized absence, which I have to say really got my back up. So there's quite a few things that we're dealing with as working parents, and that's just like a tiny example. What I want you to know is, first of all, I feel your pain, I share your pain. Although I have to say, I'm a mum now of two, gosh, I can't believe I'm saying this, older boys. My youngest is 13, he's going to be 14 in December, and my oldest is 18 years old. How did that happen? I do, however, have a third boy. His name is Ernie. He's my Labradoodle, and he is only 9 years old. So this is me, in case you hadn't noticed in the little thumbnail. I'll have the thumbnail up and I might take it down from time to time just to focus your attention onto a slide where I really want you to look at something. Now, just a little forewarning, you will be sent, along with this video, a little fun sheet, and that fun sheet will have some questions. I'm a great believer that if we just listen to something, we'll retain maybe 10% of the information, whereas if we write down, we will increase the information that we retain. If you know that I'm going to ask you a few little quiz questions and they are fun, you'll retain even more information. So do make sure you've got your fun sheet, and top tip, maybe print it out and have your pen at the ready. You might also want to have a pen for this session so that you can take any notes that if there's anything that you find useful. So here we go, 2020, a visual representation. This isn't going to be in the fun sheet, but there's no prizes. It's a dog's dinner, let's face it. I was thinking of showing you a piece of modern art here, which was just lots and lots of squiggly lines, but then the phrase dog's dinner came to mind. That's what we're dealing with here in 2020. And I want to just bring this back into the context of something that you may have heard of called the change curve, because 2020 is change unprecedented. Unprecedented. There's another overused word for 2020. I'd like you to have a look at this change curve now. And I am going to just stop my video so that you focus on this change curve. Okay, so I'd like you to look at the left-hand side of the change curve, and it starts with anxiety. And then you go through to denial, frustration, depression, experiment, decision, and through to integration. You'll see that this curve that I've taken, that I've included in this slide deck, is from an organisation called Sports Able. It's a charity that helps people to change lives through sport, so people with disabilities or permanent injuries. I chose this because I think it is the best representation of the Kubler-Ross change curve I have seen. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a lady who designed this to help people going through grief. Now, if you think about 2020, if you think what's happened with the pandemic since March, we're all going through different forms of grief. And the reason that I've started with this is I want to ask you a question, and I come as a coach from one of my principles is awareness is the precursor to choice. What that means is that when you're more aware of something, you can make different choices, and I'll be talking about choices in depth further on. So first of all, I'd like you to look at this, and I'd like you to think, where were you on this change curve the week before lockdown, when we all kind of knew it was going to happen, when the uncertainty and the media was at fever pitch, and there was a lot of fear around? Were you at anxiety, denial, frustration, depression, or were you beyond there? Now, if you're like most people, you will definitely be on the left of this change curve. And the chances are that probably once we'd got into the rhythm of lockdown, despite all the uncertainties and the very real threats to people's jobs, to mental health, to just going mad, having the kids around, and so many different aspects that I can't even begin to list them here. But despite all that, it was likely that towards the end of the lockdown, you might have been more to the right. You might have been in experimentation, maybe even decision, possibly even in integration. Now, what I think is interesting is that post-lockdown, there was a period of almost, okay, maybe things are going to be okay here. But now it seems that we are in this dog's dinner phase again. We're in the squiggly line. Who knows where we are? And what I want you to know is it's okay wherever you are. You might feel you've gone backwards. You might feel that you're in a good place right now. You might feel like you're hopping all around this change curve. It doesn't matter where you are, and it might change day to day, depending on what you're dealing with as a human being, as a mom, as a dad, as a carer. But I just think this is really useful, because once you realize this, once you can put a label to how you're feeling, you can accept it. The more that we can accept our feelings and emotions, the more that we can then resolve to deal with them, say, okay, this is where we are, and move forward. What I'm going to share with you today in this session, first of all, a special kind of resilience. And that was a comment that was made by a friend. She said, it's a special kind of resilience that we need. Now, what does that mean? Again, it's all down to this phrase, unprecedented times, change on an unprecedented scale, uncertainty. Usually with resilience, we're talking about something that we build upon over a long term, but quite often we know that it's going to end at a certain point. We need a special kind of resilience because we don't know exactly when this is going to end or how it's going to end. So it's a resilience about accepting and about doing what you can. The concept of choice, which I mentioned before, which we're about to go into, values-based parenting, good enough is good enough, and constraints lead to creativity. So, a special kind of resilience. What kind of resilience do we need? I liked this image of the hand sanitizer completely drowning this poor boy, because I do feel sorry for our kids. I really do, in the kind of change that they are dealing with. The special kind of resilience we need is a kind of resilience where we can be okay with things not being okay. When we can accept what is happening, even if we don't like it, even if we don't agree with it, and we look for what we can change. So that special kind of resilience almost means that we almost have to block things out. We have to become a little bit blinkered so that we can keep going and get up each day and go, right, let me at it, day. What have you got in store for me? I'll deal with it. And then tomorrow we'll see what happens. So you've heard the phrase, take each day as it comes. I think the resilience that we need right now is absolutely about taking each day as it comes. And I think that's probably going to be where you'll notice the focus of my attention in today's session. The concept of choice. There is no wrong way. As you can see from this image, it's the right way, or the right way. Except that there's no wrong way. Sometimes we become paralyzed when we are trying to make choices. And the reason that I'm introducing the concept of choice here is because that we have so many choices to make as working parents. And one of the things that we do need to know how to do as working parents in any kind of time is learn how to make choices that are the right choices for us. And as I said before, the other aspect of choice, this word, getting your head around this word and thinking about all the different nuances as what it means to you is really, really important for us as working parents. And this is a concept that I will be talking to you about in 2019, 18, 17, 20, whatever it would be. Awareness, as I said, is the precursor to choice. You can make choices about what you do, and you can make choices about what you think. You can make choices about how you behave. You can create your own thoughts. No matter what they're saying on the 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock news, whatever it is, whatever the latest press announcement is from the Prime Minister, you can make your own choices as to how you think and what you choose to absorb and take on board. Awareness is the precursor to choice. As I said before, it's once we take a step back, we can then go, okay, I don't have to kind of think this way. I don't have to do it this way. You always get to choose. And I know that might seem really, really odd right now when we are being told what we can do and what we can't do. Now, some of you will be absolutely fine with that. Some of you may be like me, and I have a core value of freedom and independence. So you can bet your bottom dollar that the various rules they make me squirm. I'm almost kind of twitching. So I can tell you, I really am having to walk my talk. And this is something that I have to practice each day. Now, when we get to, this is how we get to choose, and I'm sure you're busily looking at this image at the moment. And this is called your locus of control. And I want you to have a think about what is out of your control right now. what is out of your control, and what is within your control. And you might want to pause this now to answer those questions. What is out of your control, and what is within your control? And now let's look at this concept of the locus of control. As you can see from this image, on the left, you've got the lady with her hand up saying she makes things happen. This is what she can do. She can determine her future. And that's called an internal locus of control. The lady on the right, she's kind of like, well, there's nothing I can do. Why does this always happen to me? Why bother? This little image I've got here, she looks quite bright, but actually you could imagine her as hunched up, because the person with the external locus of control is likely to have that kind of posture. They're likely to feel that the world is just happening to them. Well, guess what? Let's see if you can read that. This, above all, refuse to be a victim. You get to choose. And I know we have to follow certain rules at the moment, but you get to choose how you think and what you make of that. So my first tip for you around this concept of choice is to recognize this concept of a locus of control. Where are you, honestly? Do you think you've got an external locus of control? Are you the sort of person who is saying, oh my gosh, I don't know what I can do? You know, the kids are off. I'm trying to juggle. I've got to do this. And I'm doing my best, but everybody's doing unto me. Or are you going, okay, this is what we've got to deal with. This is what I can do. What's the first thing now that I can deal with? And you can only deal with one thing at a time. Right, another point where I want you to pause this video and do a little exercise. This is a really, really, really useful exercise, and it's called My Choices. What you do is you get a piece of paper and you fold it in half, get a piece of A4 paper if you can, fold it in half. On your left-hand side, write I have to at the top, and on the right-hand side, write I choose to. What I want you to do, I want you to think about all of the different things that you've got to do today, this week, generally. I have to feed my kids, I have to walk the dog, I have to finish a report, I have to attend a meeting, I have to, all of those little admin things that we have as parents. Write them down in your I have to column. Once you've done that, so pause the video now, come back, and then we'll do the next bit. Okay, so welcome back if you've paused the video, and if you haven't already moved ahead, as I suspect some of you might have done, the next bit is I choose to. I want you to now take the statements that you wrote on your left. Well, I have to walk the dog, I have to finish my report, and I want you to rewrite them as I choose to walk the dog, I choose to finish my report, I choose to attend the meeting. Here's the thing, we all have the choice. Nobody can make you do anything. You might say, well, yeah, of course I've got to turn up to work. Of course I've got to feed my kids. Yes, there are consequences to everything, but you're still choosing to do it. Now, the reason I've got you to do this exercise is it's tremendously freeing. And believe you me, I have done this for many years with many, many different parents and with myself. And it really does help. What it does is it kind of releases a pressure valve in your head, and you go, okay, yeah, so I chose to do this. Once we feel that we've got a choice, it just makes everything feel lighter. And remember, I talked about that special kind of resilience. We really need to look at those things that we have to do now, because that is going to grow that special kind of resilience of what we do have control over. This session is all about control freakery. No, it's not, because actually there is some letting go. Now this one, I love this exercise. Pause the video and write down which you would choose. 1, 2, 3, or 4. I'd be interested to know what you choose. And yes, this is in the workbook. And when we do the Q&A session after this, I would really love, if you can come to that, I would really love to know which you chose, whether you chose the 8 hours of sleep, whether the house cleans itself, your kids eat everything, you serve them without complaining, or someone runs all of your errands. If I was doing this as a live session, I would do a poll. It's always really interesting to know. Now, I'm not going to spoil the surprise as to what the right answer is or what most people respond. You'll have to come to the Q&A session to learn what that is. Okay, so we've looked at choice. Now let's look at something else which is actually related to choice, which is about values. Values are who we are. We are all guided by enduring principles and values. And when we act or think about acting in a way that isn't aligned with these principles, we experience frustration and we get negative stress. When we know what's important, it helps us to prioritize everything in our lives, and it allows us also to effectively manage our time. And I know that if I was asking you now, what's the biggest issue for you? One of them is going to be about that time thing. So just to demonstrate values, imagine I've got a glass jar and I've got some stones and I've got some earth. Imagine that I've got to get, first of all, some rocks into this jar. And the rocks are the really important big things in your life. The stones, the smaller stones, are the less important things. And the earth is the niggly little stuff that just seems to consume so much of our time. You know, the stuff, getting on the phone to the bank, the utilities companies, all that kind of stuff. So what happens when you do the niggly stuff first? Of course, what happens when you do the niggly stuff first is that it fills your jar up. What you want to do is you want to put the rocks in the jar and then the stones, because the stones will find a way around the rocks. And as for the niggly stuff represented by that soil, it always finds a way in. So values about putting first things first and understanding what first things first actually means for you. Let's look at a description of, well, let's look at a lovely, lovely quote around values-based parenting. And every day the world will drag you by the hand yelling, this is important, and this is important, and this is important. You need to worry about this and this and this. And each day it's up to you to yank your hand back, put your hand on your heart and say, no, this is what's important. And that for me represents values. And values-based parenting is about parenting through the filter of your values, about it identifying what your core values are. And when you do this, I suggest that you think about 5 core values. Only allow yourself 5, 7 maximum. On this heart, you can see some words, and these words represent values. Now, it might be that you look at this and you think, okay, yes, that's one of my values. But just be aware when you're looking at values, not to cherry pick from a list, because the temptation then is that we'll pick values that we think we should have. Oh, yes, that's a very worthy value. Your values are nobody else's business. They're not my business. They're not your company's business. They are only your business. If you have a partner, understanding what your shared parenting values is particularly powerful. For example, one of my values is joie de vivre. That's a French word. And I can have a French word as my value. I can have a string of words as my value. Joie de vivre, fun, just life. For me, that expresses my value. So it's just what it means to you. As a parent, what that means for me is that my parenting values are filtered through that joie de vivre. So I am the mom who says, come on, let's do this. Let's try this. let's discover this. And that means that you can then choose how you want to parent. I've always sort of, when the boys were young, I had a saying called, I said, "Oh, I'm not origami, mum." And I'm honestly not to kind of disrespect anyone who is amazingly crafty, but I wasn't the sort of mum to kind of sit down and be creative. But when I realised that I didn't have to be, that I could parent through my own values, that gave me a tremendous sense of peace. Now, how does this work within the context of helping you to survive as a parent? First of all, it's one of the most valuable things that you can do as a parent anyway. And again, I do workshops on values for parents, just talking about this in more depth at any time, because it helps you to be resistant to what other people are doing, to what other people say you should be doing. And I think this is particularly dangerous nowadays because of WhatsApp groups. Oh my gosh, I am lucky I'm not in any parenting WhatsApp groups now, but a lot of my friends are. And sometimes they look at it, and I know that there'll be some of you watching this who will hark back to lockdown. You might even be able to tell me a story of some parents saying, "Oh, well, I'm doing this with my child and this with my child," and you're questioning yourself. What the values do is they stop you from second doubting yourself and going, "Okay, well, that's all right for Tilly Mint and her son Thomas Mint. They can do that. My value is this. So I don't need to start questioning myself, feeling guilty, blaming myself." It gives you strength against other people. It helps you to make the decisions that are right for you. Remember that concept of choice, and helps you to be at peace as a parent. Particularly important now. Okay. This next one I absolutely love, and I hope you do too. And it's inspired by my wonderful friend, Grace Marshall, who she is a published author of How to Be, oh gosh, I forgot the name, How to Be Incredibly Productive, and I've got that wrong, but you look up Grace Marshall. She's fantastic. And if you search for Grace and search for her to-do list, you will be able to read a blog post about this. We're so good, aren't we, at to-do lists, but the to-do list is about celebrating what you've achieved, not what you haven't. Thinking about what your proudest moments are, what you've achieved this day, and what qualities you needed to achieve them. Even bring those values into it. Our focus is always about what's not done. And when life gets crazy, and let's face it, life is crazy now, it can be really tempting for us to keep up that pressure and keep going, ticking off the to-do list. When you celebrate those achievements, you generate more fuel, more energy, and this is linked to your special kind of resilience. You're going to need that energy to keep going. Okay, so next tip, we're going to do a couple of time management tips now, real quick. This one, identify your set in stones. What is your set in stone? So as a parent, your set in stone might be, for me, it might be, you are always kind to other people. I do not tolerate unkindness to your brother. That is a set in stone. Where I might let things go is if they're a little, well, I have to, they are untidy, my boys, I have to say, very, very untidy. And so I have to let a lot of that go. Put your stuff away in the dishwasher. They always make their bed, but, pick your clothes up, pick your damp towels up, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes that's not a set in stone for me. Think about what's important. This is about not driving yourself crazy, trying to be the perfect parent, trying to get it all done, trying to get your children to do it all. Apply this to any area of your life. Apply it to your work. Apply it to your kids. If you're going through homeschooling, apply it to anything. What's the set in stone? What's the absolute must-have? And just make sure that is about quality, not quantity. That gives you the freedom from thinking you've got to get it all done and be all and do it all. It's just, you can't do that. The second one is just very simple, but I love this, and I do this on the days when I'm feeling the O word, overwhelm. And that is using the power of 3, your MITs, or your most important tasks. So pause the video now and write down what your 3 MITs, your most important tasks, are today. Simple as that. Helps you to focus, and that's all you need to do. And that will give you that sense of, yes, this is what I said was most important. Focus on the most important things. I'm sure you've heard this one before, but it really is worth repeating. Put your own oxygen mask on. I always think that I've been saying this. I haven't told you, but I've been coaching and facilitating for, almost 19 years now. I used to be a project manager in IT, and then I came to coaching when I was threatened with redundancy when Max was in my womb when I was pregnant, 6 months pregnant. Been quite a journey since then. And I came across the concept of coaching when I was in my own little bit of a crisis. Loved it so much that I decided to train as a coach. Now, because of my experience as a mum and my threat to my career when I was pregnant, I took a particular interest in the issues faced by working mums, and then on a wider scale with working dads. And one of the first concepts that I learned was about putting your own oxygen mask on. And that's really important, because it's like, you can see the picture in front of you. When you go on an aeroplane and they do the demonstration, the safety demonstration, they say to you, if you're with somebody who relies on you and there is a loss of cabin pressure, put your own mask on first before helping someone else. It's not selfishness. It's about you being conscious, compos mentis, alive even, so that you can help the people with you. And that metaphor within the context of what we're doing here, you are a parent, we are going through beep times right now. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Self-care is essential. It's essential. You hear me? You know it. You've heard it in the magazines. I'm telling you, it's essential. Put your own oxygen mask on first. I remember back when Max was a baby, a very wise midwife said to me, happy mum, happy baby. And I will argue this until my dying day. You see it, just go around and look, go for a walk and look at people walking their dogs and watch to see if they're happy people or miserable people. And you quite often see that the dogs pick up on their energy. Maybe that's just my theory. Anyway, your kids will pick up on that energy. Your kids need your energy. You know I'm right. I don't need to belabor this point. Put your oxygen mask on. Now, this one, we all know that kids play. We see animals play. But how often do you take time out to play? I know that at the time of recording this, it's September 2020. Half term in October is coming up. And I had a spiffing wheeze that we would go to London and have a great time playing, because I've noticed that at my youngest son's school, play seems to have been pretty much reduced. There seems to be very few practicals. Well, there are no practicals. They're still doing PE, but there's no science practicals. There's that element that the kids usually enjoy, which has that element of play, has reduced. So I wanted to do something with Fred and decided, yes, let's go to London, do some fun stuff. Anyway, looking at the various uncertainties and what's actually going to be possible and whether it's going to be cancelled, etc., looks like that's not going to happen now. But I thought about this and I thought, you know what? No matter what, we are going to play. We're going to incorporate some play at half term. Now, I will be working as well during half term. I will be doing some work, but I will take some time out to play. Try to take some time out every day to play, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be with your kids. It can be with your kids. The play is for you, and it's a bonus if you play with your kids, but that doesn't mean that you have to. Do something silly, move your body, go find an online exercise class that has an element of playful movement. just hang out, do something that makes you feel a bit joyful, a bit silly, a bit of a child. Study after study shows that play helps us with our resilience and helps to keep us in a very, very resourceful state. Ironically, the more that you play, the more that you kind of act like a child and take life less seriously, the more you will be able to deal with the seriousness of life. Okay, so moving swiftly on to a little story about managing your cognitive load. I'd like to tell you a story. Well, it's not a story, it's research. This is true, from Columbia University. And it's about the link between making our willpower, our energy, and bad decisions. Why some criminals don't get a fair hearing. In a study published by the National Academy of Sciences, psychologists examined the factors that impact whether or not a judge approves a criminal for parole. The researchers examined 1,112 judicial rulings over a 10-month period. All of the rulings were made by a parole board judge who was determining whether or not to allow a criminal to be released from prison on parole. You might assume that the judges were influenced by factors like the type of crime committed or the particular laws that were broken. But the researchers found exactly the opposite. The choices made by judges are impacted by all types of things that shouldn't have an impact on the courtroom, most notably time of day. Now listen to this. What they found was at the beginning of the day, a judge was likely to give a favourable ruling about 65% of the time. But as the morning wore on and the judge became drained from making more and more decisions, the likelihood of the criminal getting a favourable ruling steadily dropped to zero by lunchtime. Gets even weirder. After taking a lunch break, the judge would return to the courtroom refreshed. The likelihood of a favourable ruling immediately jumped back to 65%. And then as the hours moved on, the percentage of favourable rulings would fall back down to zero at the end of the day. And this trend was true for more than 1,100 cases. It didn't matter what the crime was, murder, theft, rape, embezzlement. A criminal was more likely to get a favourable response in their parole hearing when it was scheduled in the morning. So what can we learn from this other than if you're up for parole, make sure that you are early on in the day with the judge? It's that your willpower is like a muscle. And like muscles in our body, it gets fatigued when you use it over and over again. So just as you do a rep in the gym and eventually your muscles will get fatigued, it's similar to how this works with your willpower, and researchers often call it decision fatigue. So the judges that we just heard in that case were suffering from decision fatigue as their energy starts to fade. And I want you to think about this in your life. Decision fatigue happens in everyday life. If you've got a heavy day at work and lots of things to do, you'll come home and you'll be drained. And you might want to do all the things that you decided go to the gym, do your study, be an absolutely super duper parent, but your brain just wants to absolutely not do anything. Just like veg out in front of the telly. And that is decision fatigue. So what do we do about that? Plan all of the decisions, the important things early on in the day. Do things, all those things that we've heard of as parents, like putting your clothes out the night before. I've had to do this a lot recently because I've had some very early mornings. So literally putting my coffee mug out, my breakfast, the clothes I'm going to wear, everything out the night before, ready to hit the ground running. And just remember that it's about doing the important things first. And again, think about that big rocks. Do the important things first and accept you can't do everything. Make a decision to do the important things. Think about those 3 MIT's most important tasks. And just give yourself a break that you will tire out towards the end of the day. And we're going to finish off now with perhaps my favourite, which is looking for the good. Please read these. Take a screenshot if you want, pause this and write them down. Choose the one that you like the best. First of all, it is what it is. Accept it. You cannot change it. It will either control you or you will control it. Sorry, this is one section. My slides have gone to 1, 2, 3. This is one quote, and it's from Samuel Beckwith. Samuel Beckwith. It is what it is. Accept it. You cannot change it. You will either control it. It will either control you or you will control it. Harvest the good. The more you look for it, the more you'll find. Forgive all the rest. Forgive means to let go of, completely abandon. So I started this session talking about control. I even used that phrase, control freak. I talked lots about choices and how we can use values as a prism to make those choices. We've talked about doing MITs, your 3 most important tasks, your set in stones, managing your cognitive load and putting your oxygen mask on. And now we're kind of coming full circle into this acceptance. Remember I talked about that special kind of resilience. That special kind of resilience, I believe, is encapsulated within this wonderful quote. And gratitude, looking for the good, is something that will really, really help you here. There are so many studies now to show that the more that we tune into gratitude, the more we will see things to be grateful for. I have a notebook right here, and every single day, my morning routine is to write down 10 things that I'm grateful for from the previous 24 hours. I tune into little moments, not just generalities, not I'm grateful for a roof in my head. You have to look for the moments. This exercise will train your brain, and it will work on an energetic level to help you to look for the good. The more that you look for the good, the more you'll be able to see good in anything. The best thing one can do when it is raining is to let it rain. And let's finish with some mantras that may help. And this is the one where I meant to say, choose one, pause it, write it down, take it with you. Thank you very much for listening to me today. I look forward to your questions. I really hope that I will be able to answer them and support you further. Please do enjoy your fun sheet and take very, very good care of you and yours. Bye-bye.